more robust. How do we do that? Well, we match the problem with an appropriate technique, right? All those buzzwords I showed you in the AI cloud at the beginning of that, for all of those different subfields in AI, there's dozens, if not hundreds, of algorithms under the hood that one could apply, right? You can kind of get lost in the weeds there. But we have, a team of data scientists here. I run a research team of 10 people, and we have a lot of ancillary members as well that are able to help us find ways to connect these business problems to the AI techniques that are right for them. We innovate, so I don't think there's anything at Kronos where we've just taken an off-the-shelf AI algorithm and just let it loose in the wild. We find ways to innovate with features, scale, and knowledge that we've built up over the last 40 years. When we started building this retail volume forecaster, one of the first things we did is went out to people in the field and professional services and said, okay, what really drives business volume? What are you seeing out there? What are you hearing from the crowd? And not only are we talking to customers and talking to our people in the field, but we test our solutions on real data. So we bring in real customer data with their permission. We make agreements with them. We say, well, hey, we're doing some prototyping. Do you want to help out, make the product better? And we bring in real data and we actually test it. And I'll show you some of the results of those tests later on. A lot of companies don't do that. They just kind of deploy and say like, oh yeah, we think it's going to be pretty good. We know things are going to be pretty good. And finally, we deliver, right? We've got the infrastructure and the technology to do it, and that's what that D5 platform is really enabling. So I'll pause here, I think, because I don't want to just kind of run through all the slides and ask if you guys. I'll get into the use cases and the cool stuff here that we're doing in a second. But are there any kind of questions about kind of the ways that we see dimensions enabling AI, or the ways that we're kind of promoting dimensions as an AI tool? I've got them speechless.
Okay, I guess no questions at that point. We can move forward.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, will do. All right, so let's talk about some of the product use cases, right? So this is where the rubber meets the road. One of the things I tell people, especially those of you that are in the field that are interacting with customers a lot, is you don't have to think about AI and machine learning. You don't need to go get a PhD in this stuff to talk to customers about it, because there's different levels that different customers are going to want to get to, and you've seen this already because you guys have been talking to customers about AI solutions for years, right? As I mentioned, the schedule optimization engine is an AI algorithm, right? And so when you talk to a customer like that, you talk to them about use cases, about finding coverage gaps and how the scheduler fills those in and that sort of thing. So you've probably talked to a customer about advanced scheduling at some point, but you've probably never talked to them about simulated annealing. You've probably never mentioned mixed integer programming, other than maybe as a buzzword. And I dare say almost no one's mentioned the Hungarian matching algorithm. But all of these things are sitting there under the hood, right? These are all kind of complex terms that underlie a very complex process that does something business-wise that customers really need, which is produce a schedule. And we view the machine learning and AI algorithms that way as well, that they are fulfilling a customer need, and they are fulfilling a gap in the business process. And they've got a lot of fancy stuff under the hood, but we're not particularly trying to sell the fancy stuff. And so I'll talk here about kind of what we're doing to at a high level to solve some of these business problems at that level. All right, so why did we get interested in forecasting in the first place? Well, this has been a Kronos use case for a long time. So the idea here is you need to make a schedule. And you need to make a schedule to match demand. And this might be in retail, but there might be other verticals where this would be helpful as well, like healthcare, where you need to get a schedule that's going to get the right number of people on the floor to match what you think is going to happen in terms of business. So if in retail, that might be how much you think you're going to sell on a given day. In a restaurant, it's how many people might come into a bar or something like that. So what do we need to do there is we need to actually make a forecast, right? We need to actually say, okay, this many people are going to be in the store. And once we have that, well, the scheduling algorithms are going to be able to figure out how to fill in the schedule. And what has traditionally been the Kronos practice has been selling what we consider to be static forecasters. These are things like the traditional daily trend, exponential smoothing, or adaptive algorithms that those of you that deal with retail have been consulting about for a long time. These static forecasters, these were driven by data, right? All of our forecasting algorithms are driven by the data. They all take into account what's going on. But they were static in the sense that the formula that you used was not changing with the data, right? So the daily trend algorithm, it averages the last few weeks. It looks at the averages from 1 year ago, and then it puts those together. It makes a unique forecast, but that formula is always the same. You can write it down in Excel or on a piece of paper, and you can calculate. And unfortunately, these algorithms, while they've been very well tested in the field and they do work, I mean, we sell a lot of these, they're not always as accurate as possible. They're kind of difficult to extend. You know, if you want to do any kind of tweak to these things, you start having to mess around with the formula itself or put in kind of weird event tags that you might not be comfortable with. And so what we did was we went back and took a step back and said, okay, what is going on in academia? What's going on in the industry? How would we build a forecaster from the ground up? Because that's what Dimensions is all about, right? It's about reinventing the company and reinventing the product. And what we came up with is that machine learning was the way to do this. And the really difference here between the static forecasters and machine learning is that machine learning makes it the customer's own model. So I have up here, you have the one-size-fits-all static forecaster that I talked about before. Data comes in, forecast comes out, and it's a formula that someone wrote down, someone really smart wrote down, but it's at the end of the day, it's just one formula. What machine learning does is it analyzes all that data. In our case, we look at 2 to 3 years of a customer's actual volumes, and it figures out what patterns seem to be repeating in that data, what features of the data seem to be predictive of the volume that it's trying to predict, and it basically figures out what things matter and what things don't for that customer, right? So if you have very strong weekly patterns, it's going to pick that up. If you have very strong monthly patterns, it's going to pick that up. If you have strong seasonality around the end of December, it's going to pick that up. If your weekends are higher than your weekdays, it's going to pick that up. There's a lot of stuff to pick up here, but because, again, we have this D5 platform, we have all this kind of computational power, we're able to really analyze the data in a way that allows us to find all those kind of root causes and produce a model that's specific to this customer. So if we're selling this to Home Depot or something, then this is a different model that they're going to get out of their machine learning forecaster than Target, right? So this is a good thing, right? This is all about personalization of your forecasting model, and it's tailored to fit this particular customer. So how does that work from a more technical perspective? So there are various kind of processes that have to happen here. So in terms of terminology, I highlighted some of the key terminology that's helpful in communicating these processes to customers because it is different, right? First, the forecasting process itself is split into two portions. One is a training phase. The training phase is where that model is built. So that's where we look at 2 to 3 years of data. We convert it to features. Those are metrics that, KPIs basically that cover trends on the historical volume. So what have your averages been like? What have ratios of different averages been like? What seasonality? So what month has there been high spikes in? What weeks? What days of the week seem to have the most effect? Organizational features. So what kind of department are we trying to forecast? What region are we looking at? And as well as special events. Special events are still a part of the forecasting algorithm here. They don't go away. There's still no way for the machine learning model to magically determine that you had a buy one, get one sale. It certainly can see those kind of patterns, but it's going to help it an awful lot if it still gets those tags. So all of that goes into making the model. And then the prediction phase happens later when you actually have to predict volume. And that model is basically used along with the features of the current data to make predictions. And the good news is you know, these two phases, they have different computational needs. This training, it's got to crunch on a lot of raw data. It's got to squeeze all the insight out of it there. It's got to figure out, hey, does this day of the week matter on this month and that sort of thing. So it's looking at an awful lot of combinations of things, and it takes a good amount of computation time. It has to be slow. Well, there's some upfront costs you've got to pay in basically your setup of the machine learning forecaster. But in terms of running your actual predictions, you shouldn't see significant differences in the timing for running the machine learning forecaster versus running earlier versions. So I'll go into details in a second of some of the things that the machine learning algorithm does and some of the differentiators. Any questions on this as a process? It's a lot of terminology to swallow, but hopefully it makes some sense.
We have one question from Tim Priest asking, do you see an opportunity for us to adopt a persona like Siri within Dimensions, one that speaks to help them navigate or answer questions about the system?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of research on the Chronos side about that. It's more of a product decision right now than a data science decision. I can tell you that you know, the technology's out there to build something like that, right? But there's obviously a lot of costs to build something like that as well, and to maintain it and to use it. And so there's a lot of consideration around use cases there, but we haven't